of us on this call is unique, special, and extraordinary. There is not one other human being like us on this planet. How special that is. But we often forget that we are unique, special, and extraordinary, and we forget that the people that we are relating to are unique, special, and extraordinary. Therefore, being a mystic, the first step is to start celebrating and embracing organizations as a mystery. Usually our approach to organizations is we relate to organization as a problem to be solved. You're getting to work, all that you're thinking about is all the problems that you deal with. In fact, we even relate to our colleagues in the organization and the people in our teams as problem to be solved, whereas the mystic will say, no, embrace other people as a mystery to be celebrated. Know that, maybe 10% of who you are is known to you, 10% of who I am is known to me, 90% of who I am is a mystery to me, and 90% of who you are is a mystery to you. Now, when you can become comfortable with mystery, when you can become comfortable with ambiguity, not knowing and not having the need to understand everything, but to leave some part of it unexplained, at that point, we have stepped into the world of the mystic. Now, I want to talk a little bit about management and leadership training. If you really look at the history of management and leadership training, it has evolved through 5 stages. The first stage of management and leadership training, we tended to look upon people as economic entities. What does that mean? After the Industrial Revolution, people were interested in how can I extract the maximum productivity of this person? So if you're familiar with the work of the industrial engineers and Frederick Winslow Taylor and all the time and management studies, it was about how do I extract the maximum work or output or productivity out of a human being. So human beings were economic entities to be used in the service of greater profits. That was the first step. The second stage, we began to awaken to the reality that human beings were just not economic entities, they were also social entities. They formed relationships at work. In fact, they would have an informal organization of relationships. And these relationships was a very important part of organizations. In fact, many of you may have heard of the Hawthorne experiments that were performed at the Western Electric Company, in the Hawthorne works of the Western Electric Illinois Company. To put it in a nutshell, those experiments awakened us to how the social relationships that people formed, the importance that they were being given, actually influenced the productivity. Therefore, people were also social entities, and you saw an explosion of interest in team building programs and interpersonal relation skills training and all of those kinds of efforts. The third stage of leadership and management development was when we started viewing people as bundles of competencies or abilities. Many of you may be familiar with the work of David McClelland and his research into competencies, the idea that every job can be defined or described in terms of key competencies: planning, organizing skills, persuasiveness, empathy, attention to detail. These are the abilities of superior or effective managers. So the search was on for defining jobs in terms of what were the differentiating competencies, which meant what were the abilities that high performers in any job were able to demonstrate. So leadership and management training became a matter of providing training in those competencies or exposing you to developmental experiences, perhaps job rotations, perhaps assigning you to special projects that will help you to develop those competencies. So now we saw people as economic entities, as social entities, as bundles of competencies. The fourth era of management and leadership training started looking at people as emotional entities. Many of you have heard the phrase emotional intelligence, the idea that there is a subtle exchange of emotion between people in any situation. And though that exchange of emotion is very important, and therefore good managers are people who have emotional intelligence. They're able to demonstrate empathy, self-control, and regulation of their own emotions. They're able to connect with people at an emotional level. So the fourth phase of leadership and development training started looking at people as emotional entities. Right now, we are at the fifth stage. You can call it leadership 5.0, where we are beginning to treat people as embodiments of human consciousness. We have recognized that beyond the knowledge and skill and abilities, people's effectiveness at work and their ability to form relationships is determined by something that's invisible called consciousness. What is consciousness? Now, before I talk about the 6 paths, if you will, to being a mystic, I want to touch briefly upon the idea of a post-management world. So the management world was one where managers were trained to have planning, organizing, leading, and controlling skills. So basically there were problems, the problems were known, and the path to the problems was fairly clear. The manager's role was to facilitate a path to the problems and to find the solutions were fairly clear cut. Right now the word that you might have heard is VUCA, VUCA world. And I'm sure some of you have heard the acronym VUCA, a world that is volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous, or volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. In this VUCA world, we don't even know what the problems will be tomorrow, let alone today. There is so much uncertainty and so much ambiguity in a world where the situations are unfamiliar, the problems are novel and unfamiliar. We cannot train people to have like a formula-based solution to any problem. So that means, what do we equip people with? The ability to generate in the moment. So that if you're in an unexpected situation, you are able to generate in the moment. So what we need is a readiness to tap into your own creativity. And because of that, the emphasis of the kind of knowledge that is needed has changed. For those of you who are familiar with epistemology is the science of how do you know what you know? The first phase of knowledge is, I know that I know, all the things that I know that I know. In the management world, the emphasis on what do I know that I don't know? Like, for example, I may not know how to read a balance sheet. I take accounting courses to read a balance sheet, right? I know that I don't know. But in the VUCA world, we have moved to the next layer, which is I don't know that I don't know. There is so much in the world that I don't know, and I don't even know that I don't know it. It is so far removed from my understanding of awareness, and that is part of what is the management training in the VUCA world. Authors have also talked about, Chris Argyris at Harvard talked about single loop learning, double loop learning, and now they've added triple loop learning. Single loop learning is, are we doing things right? That was the traditional management question. Are we doing things right? In the post-management world, the question has become, are we doing the right things? Which is double loop learning. And the third level, the triple loop learning, is how do we even know what is right? As many of us have known, many of the solutions for today's problems create new problems tomorrow. So we don't even know what is right. And in this level of ambiguity, we are now looking to search for ways by which we can create an expansion in human consciousness. I have been doing a series of seminars and workshops for industries and organizations here in various parts of the world, where I have touched upon 6 pathways to celebrating the potential for being an organizational mystic within organizations. So I may not have time to cover all the 6 pathways. I'll try to cover a couple of them in detail just to give you a taste of it, and perhaps just touch upon a few of the others. The first pathway, which comes from the Eastern traditions, is based on the Eastern metaphor of the chattering monkey. Many of you might have heard that Eastern mystics like Osho, as well as in the Zen tradition, they talk about a chattering monkey. What is a chattering monkey? It is a voice in your head that is talking continuously to you. In fact, even as I'm talking to you, some of you have a voice in your head that is talking continuously to you. Some of you may be familiar with the Western character Curious George, who's in children's books. So I just brought Curious George with me to illustrate how the chattering monkey works his magic. So for example, right now my chattering monkey is saying, excuse me, sorry, I hope Gazia, Alvina, and Nitinji are approving of my presentation. What if they are just waiting for me to finish? What if this is really not interesting?
So there is a smile on everybody's face. I
That is
know.
very good to see. Thank you. So the chattering monkey will always fill me with doubts, right? So I want to share with you how powerful the chattering monkey can be in um, creating problems at work. I once worked in an office where I had a boss who would walk in through the main office door. She would stop at my desk for a few minutes and she would go to her office. She did this every day. But one day she came in through the office door and just walked directly to her office. She didn't look at me, she didn't say anything to me. It is at those moments that I can become aware of my chattering monkey. Curious George said, "Did you just see what happened? She didn't say hello to you today? How come? Yesterday you were with her till 8:30 p.m. at night and you were worked late in the meeting and she said thank you. She seemed happy with you. But what has changed by 8:30 a.m. in the morning? Surely nothing could have changed. Oh, I know, I think I know what it is. It's my boss's boss. He didn't seem happy with me at all. Maybe he said something to her about me, and now she has become prejudiced and biased against me. Well, I better stop worrying about this because this is going to ruin my entire day. I'm going to go back at lunchtime and make sure that everything is okay. Folks, how many sentences do you think Curious George has spoken just because my boss walked directly to her office? Perhaps about 20, 30 sentences. Notice how many of you can see that from the point we wake up in the morning till the time we go to bed, there's a continuous inner talking going on in our heads, continuous inner chatter. And it fills you with doubts, it fills you with stress, and all of that goes on. So, what did I decide? I said, let me go back at lunchtime and see what my boss is thinking. So, I go back to her at lunchtime. And you know what? I want to share with you the backstory that Curious George was not aware of. The backstory was this: my boss was supervising a project that five of my colleagues were involved with. I was not involved with that project at all. So my boss had not involved me in that project. I was not connected with it, but that project was doing very badly. And her boss had been yelling at her. So she came into the office, she picked up her phone, called my five colleagues, and said, "Meet me for lunch. Let's fix this project." Now, I told you I was not part of the project, so she did not invite me for lunch. But poor Curious George did not know this. When I show up at her office, I saw that she was leaving with five of my colleagues for lunch to my favorite Indian restaurant in Cleveland, and she has not invited me. That's when Curious George became so angry, like he had, he became Furious George from Curious George, like he had broken into a meth lab and smoked all the meth in there. He said, "Did you just see what happened? Not only did she not say hello to you in the morning, she walked straight to her office, and now she is walking away for lunch without inviting you. What's going on? You probably won't be able to pay your rent next month. You probably will not have a job by the end of the day. You don't even have an updated resume. How do you think you're going to manage? You better go home tonight, stay up all night, come up with a few good ideas and share them tomorrow so that she doesn't fire you. You're in deep trouble." So notice again, so much tension, so much stress caused by the voice in my head. Poor Curious George did not know the only reason she did not invite me was because she was discussing a project that was going poorly and I was not connected with the project. So again, Curious George said, "She's mean. She didn't say hello to you this morning. It's unfair. She didn't invite you to lunch." And then I go home, think of the best ideas I can come up with, and I come back and I share that with her. And she says, "Param, I don't think we'll get top management support for this." At that point, Curious George loses it. He says, "You're such a jerk." So I want you to notice something, and even if you have seen this before, I've brought glasses with me to show you how this process unfolds because the statements that Curious George has made, they may be in my ear, but they go in and they start coloring how I see things. So, for example, when he says my boss is mean, I start wearing these mean lenses. Now, through this, my boss looks mean to me. When I look at my boss, I see a mean person. When he says she's unfair, she didn't invite you for lunch, I start wearing my unfair lenses on top of my mean lenses. And now my boss looks mean and unfair to me. And when he says, "What a jerk, she didn't accept your idea," I start wearing my jerk lenses. Now my boss looks like a mean, unfair jerk to me. Even if she says, "Hello, Param," in a friendly voice, I'll say, "Hello, you mean unfair jerk," because that's the voice in my head. Now, folks, I want you to think for a minute. How many of you would agree that in your own life, there is at least one friendship or one relationship that has been destroyed because of your own curious charge or because of somebody else's curious charge. So this is how mindfulness has to be practiced at the workplace. When you practice mindfulness, you start becoming aware that you are looking at people through layers and layers of lenses. And many of these lenses have come into existence as a result of stories and interpretations that you've made up. You will also have to realize that what you think of as your personality may just not be your personality. They may be just stories and interpretations that you've made up. And I want to draw upon Osho's work, a beautiful book that he wrote called Beyond Psychology, where he shows the difference between Eastern and Western psychology. Here he talks about, for example, personality. You're all aware that in today's world, we are doing personality tests. And we are treating personality as if it's real. Osho points out, is personality real? Or is it just the stories that the chattering monkey has made up about you? So, for example, all those years when I was a kid, I remember one day I went to play with all the kids in the neighborhood, and those kids were in a bad mood. They made fun of me and they mocked me and they didn't share their toys. Curious George said, Param, people don't like you. Now, whenever I look at myself in the mirror, I see a person that nobody likes. Why? Because the voice in my head told me when I was 5 years old that people don't like me. How many of you can see if when I was 5 years old, I have made up a story that people don't like me? That story is going to make me very, cautious. I probably won't relate to people. And all of a sudden, that'll become part of my personality. So you have to question. Each of us has a story about who we are. When you become a mystic, you begin to realize you don't know who you are. And not knowing who you are is not a problem, it's a possibility. When you say, I don't know who I am, then I can be anything. How does this apply in the corporate world? I used to work for Unilever, Hindustan Unilever, Lever Brothers for so many years. They used to have a very interesting practice. They had a practice that they would rotate you through a few jobs in which you had neither the experience nor the professional qualifications. So think about it. One of their finest factory managers was a PhD in English literature. Her previous job was editing the Company House magazine. One of their finest brand managers, and being a consumer product company, brand management is a very important function in marketing, had no coursework in marketing. He was an engineer who had been moved into marketing as general manager marketing. One of their finest labor relations negotiators was a PhD in chemical technology with 20 patents. So all of these experiences taught me that we think we know who we are, but when we think we know who we are, we place ourselves inside a box. And that box becomes a very limiting thing. And in today's world, they say, be aware of your strengths and weaknesses. What are these strengths and weaknesses? These are the stories that our chattering monkey has made up. You tried to give a speech in high school and you failed, and your chattering monkey told you you cannot speak in public. Well, do you know that I almost failed all my math courses all the way to high school? Why? Because my chattering monkey said, you're terrible at math, you'll never succeed at math. It's only later that I discovered that it's not that I was bad at math, it was that early on in life I made up a story that I was terrible at math. And that story became a fixed concept. So every morning, every night when you go to bed, it is important to die to your knowledge of who you are. And when you wake up in the morning, to say, I really don't know who I am. And to be able to embrace that ambiguity as a source of possibility rather than as a problem. So yes, try to become aware of who you are, but once you become aware, let that not become a box, because otherwise we live and die inside of imaginary boxes consisting of stories we've made up about who we think we are. Now, how many of you would agree that there's at least one relationship or friendship in your life that is now under stress because the chattering monkey is causing a lot of tension in it? How many of you agree that many times when you worry and when you're stressed, it's often the chattering monkey causing you all that stress? And therefore, the antidote to that, which is mindfulness, Osho would say, your thoughts are like clouds in the sky. Imagine when you look sometimes at the sky, you will see clouds moving across the sky. The thoughts and feelings that arise in you are like clouds moving across the sky. You are not your thoughts, but you are the sky itself. And that is where you realize that you might have so many thoughts in your head like a traffic jam. In fact, our mind is like a traffic jam, says Osho. It's like, in a traffic jam, one car is trying to overtake another car. Here, one thought is trying to overtake another thought. And therefore, to be able to watch these thoughts and feelings go by as if they're clouds in the sky is where mindfulness begins. And you can see readily how much our relationships at work will improve if we are able to drop those interpretations and stories, take off these lenses, and start getting to know other people. So not only is it good to know that you don't know yourself, it's also important to know that that colleague of yours that you've started hating, you don't even know who they are, and you already think you can hate them. How is it possible to hate people that we don't even know? And unfortunately, isn't that what happens in modern warfare? People go and drop bombs and drone attacks on complete strangers. What a tragedy that as human beings, we will kill people and hurt people without even knowing anything about them. That person may be a beautiful human being, but your country tells you go attack and kill him, and then you're ready to go attack and kill him. So mindfulness is very important in today's world, where we come back to a space of humility. I don't know who I am, and I don't even know who you are. And this is an opportunity for us to begin our relationship anew, to drop all the stories and interpretations we have about each other. Now, as you know, it is easy to preach such things. Takes very hard to practice them. I can give a beautiful lecture bringing a curious George and 3 pairs of lenses, but do I really practice this? So this is the challenge of the mystic. The scholar knows all the theories. If I'm a scholar, I can come and describe all the theories. But then I might not apply anything in my life. When it comes to the mystic says, forget about knowledge. The knowledge can sometimes be a barrier. How many of you know that there are people who have written books about leadership who may know nothing about leadership? I know somebody who has written 5 books about love. She's one of the most hateful people I have never known in this world. She hates everybody. She has a PhD in love and has written 5 books on love. So unfortunately, we live in this world, right? Where we can earn all these degrees and write dissertations, but really the mystic says, forget about the knowledge. It's about what you practice. I want to go into one more theme called Unsolved Tears from Osho. Osho used the phrase unsolved tears. It is one of my favorite parts of his work. It is the idea that you and I have many sad experiences that we have had in our life. We have failed. We have suffered disappointments. We have suffered rejection.
What word do you use? Unsolved tears.
Unsolved. Asu jo hai na. Can you say in poetic Hindi, unsolved, those tears that you have not sobbed?
Unsolved, okay.
Unsolved, S-O-B-B-E-D. Sobbing is crying, right?
Okay, unsolved tears. Okay, unsolved tears.
Those tears that you have not wept.
Okay.
You have suppressed them. You have accumulated them inside.
Okay.
Unsolved tears. The tears that you have not cried. The tears that you have not cried are trapped inside you. And these tears we carry. We suppress them. We don't cry. And anything that you have not experienced, the sadness, you end up having a lot of pain, right? So Osho was somebody who talked about the importance of experiencing emotions, to recognize that the pleasant and the unpleasant emotions are equally important. Sometimes we say, let me not think of sad thoughts. If you suppress the sadness will grow within. So I want to share with you the idea that Osho expressed, that we have unsolved tears. And because of the sadness, we often start wearing masks to hide ourselves. So I want to share with you folks, I have the equivalent of 4 master's degrees and a PhD, right? But do you know why I have 4 master's degrees and a PhD? Because when I was 9 years old, I was riding on the back seat of a car in New Delhi. outside Kidwainagar on Mehrali Road. Somebody in the car turned to everybody else and said, "This boy is very stupid. He never says anything intelligent. Have you noticed he's 9 years old and he's just talking nonsense all the time? Look at other 9 year old children, they're so smart." In that moment, I felt extreme shame, extreme sense of failure. And do you see how that incident that happened to me at 9 has shaped my life, that I end up acquiring the equivalent of 4 master's degrees and a PhD? So think about it. I spent 25 years trying to prove to myself and trying to prove to everybody that I was intellectually smart. Think about it, 25 years. Now, I want to share with you something. Suppose I were to tell you somebody at 9 said that I was stupid, so I have spent 25 years trying to be smart. If I tell you I have been trying to be smart for 25 years, what does it tell you that I decided when I was 9? Can you see that it means that at 9 I decided I was not smart, I was stupid? That is why I started acquiring all those degrees. But this is the tragedy of human life. If I've already decided that I'm not smart, do you think after acquiring a PhD I will feel smart? I won't, because I decided when I was 9 that I was not smart. That's why I spent 25 years in graduate school. So even at the end of the 25 years, I don't feel any sense of security. I don't feel smart. I feel the same that I did when I was 9 years old, because I've made up my mind that I'm not smart. So I want each of you to look into your own life. Is there a sense of inferiority or insecurity that you had when you were a child? And if you're trying to compensate for it, the tragedy is no matter how much you compensate, that feeling will not go away. After 4 master's degrees and a PhD, I'm still an insecure man. Think about it. How many of you know that there are actors and actresses in Hollywood and in Bollywood that you may think of as very beautiful, but they will tell you that they don't think of themselves as beautiful, they think of themselves as ugly? How many of you know that there are many people who have been poor in childhood and they have hated being poor so much that even after they become a millionaire, they're still going to be very stingy with the money because they have not come out of that state at all? So here is something Osho reminds us. If you have a childhood insecurity, no matter how much you achieve, that may not go away. So what do? You have to find a different approach. So let me share with you something. I wear, I want you to consider this. We are about 66 people or 70 people or 75 people on this call. Is that correct? Right? Now, do you realize, and I'm addressing this to each one of you on this call, I want you to consider this. Do you know that if everybody on this call had their camera turned on, there would not be another person on this call exactly like you, right? Like, for example, Gazia, would you agree that there isn't one other person in this call who's exactly like you? That you're the only person like you on this call? Can you accept that?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And same with Alvina. And same with Nitinji. There's not one other person who's exactly like you on this call. But Osho reminds us it's not just this call. Do you agree that in the whole of India, there is not one other human being exactly like you? You can go to every state in India, you won't find one other person exactly like you. You can go to every country in the planet, you won't find one person exactly like you. And then you can go to all the planet, there is not one other human being exactly like you. Osho talks about this as the cosmic joke. The cosmic joke is my whole life, I'm trying to prove that I'm special. But I was born special. There's not one other person like me on this whole planet. When you realize this, Osho says, you will start laughing at how ridiculous life is. All of us are trying to prove that we are unique. All of us we are trying to prove we are extraordinary, and we are all trying to prove we are special. What are you trying to prove, says Osho? You're already unique, special, and extraordinary. There's not one other person on this planet like you. Now, but how many of you would agree that that is not how we look at ourselves? Do you think you wake up in the morning and as you're brushing your teeth, you say, wow, There's nobody on this planet like me. I'm so special. That's not how we look at ourselves. In fact, we worry that if we see ourselves as special, we might become egoistic. But Osho reminds us you will not become egoistic, because then you'll know that everybody in this planet is unique, special, and extraordinary. No two human beings are the same. No two leaves are the same. No two pebbles are the same. When you awaken to that, you start seeing through a different set of eyes. You will only see the world covered with people who are divine. You will see somebody divine in your colleagues. You will see somebody divine in the people who are working for you. You will never see just workers or managers. What kind of a world is it where we say these are workers? Every one of the people that we think of as worker is a special human being. There's nobody like them on this entire planet. So when that kind of respect arises, that regardless of the job a person is doing, regardless of what their duties are, you're dealing with a human being. There is no other human being like them on the planet. We start considering people as unique, special, and extraordinary. Then you will get a thirst that you will not be happy just seeing the social mask a person is wearing. I wear three masks: that I'm nice, that I'm smart, that I'm humorous, right? How many of you can see? But I'm trying to fool you. That's not the real Param. The real Param is not very nice, smart, or humorous. That's what I want you to think about me. Some people will say that guy is a terrible fellow, don't deal with him. He's mean. Somebody will say he's not that smart. He's trying to prove he's smart because he's got an inferiority complex. He's not even humorous. He's so sad. I'm filled with sadness, and I'm not lying. Every night I have dreams where I'm sobbing and crying. There's tremendous sadness in me for a variety of reasons. In fact, this February, my wife divorced me. And I cannot tell you the level of sadness that I plunged into. I sank into the very depth of sadness since February. All I've been doing is listening to sad Bollywood songs and singing along, since the time my wife left me. All those. How many of you know that there are a lot of heartbreak Bollywood songs? You know, Uh, all of those I'm singing all night and trying to comfort myself. I'm a very sad person, but I will appear jovial. That is a mask. I want to raise the possibility. How many of you would agree that I could have presented this session and I could have been nice, smart, and humorous, and you would have said, okay, interesting. How many of you would agree that you feel you know me better because I've shared with you something deeper about me? That I have an inferiority complex about my intelligence. That's why I worked hard to get these degrees. You know that I have a lot of sadness in me. And knowing these things, right, helps a lot. We get to know each other. So I want to create an invitation for you. Suddenly, if you start asking people questions about their personal life and their experiences, that would be rude. You don't want to do that, right? People keep some things private and you have to respect that. But how many of you can see that out of love and genuine concern, you and compassion for people, if you are willing to listen to everything that people have gone through in their life, they will drop their masks. And when people take off their masks, you see what is called the original face. Osho talked about the Zen expression, the original face. And when we start looking at people's original face, and you take the risk and you show your original face, a deeper relationship is formed. A relationship based on compassion, a relationship based on acceptance. But Osho reminds us that you cannot do that to other people unless you have done it to yourself. The first thing that we have to deal with is that many of us have a lot of self hate. We hate ourselves. We don't love ourselves because our parents have criticized us, our teachers have criticized us, and we carry all these criticisms. So, how sometimes we are constantly criticizing and condemning ourselves. The first step is for us to notice how much we condemn and criticize ourselves. I want each one of you to go through your own life. Sit down quietly with your eyes closed. Review your life with compassion. Look at all the difficulties that you have faced. You might have faced so many emotional problems, financial problems. Have compassion for yourself. Because Osho says, unless you have compassion for yourself, unless you have love for yourself, you cannot love other people. You cannot have compassion for other people. In today's world, there is so much pain. Each one of us as a manager has to be a healing presence. We have to heal each other. And you cannot heal each other unless I've healed myself. And the way to heal myself is to accept myself as I am. How many of you would agree, if you look deep within yourself, there are many parts of yourself that you don't like? You may not even like, you may hate, but the major breakthrough I want to leave you with today is to accept yourself as you are, with all your faults and all your shortcomings, to just love and accept yourself as you are. Even if you don't remember anything from this talk, just fall in love with yourself. That's all. And accept yourself. Because how we treat other people, Osho reminds us, is a reflection of how we treat ourselves. So I just touched upon two of the paths. One was the path of the mindfulness. The other was the path of self-acceptance. I want to name the four other paths that I did not touch upon, maybe another time, maybe another place. One of them is called the path of awakening to your being. Awakening to your being, you will recognize we are living in a world of doing and having. We are constantly doing and having. But being is the most precious part of a human being. Here, for example, try this on. How many of you know that, we talk about taking a great vacation, right? You want to go have a vacation in Goa. How many of you know that you could be sitting in a five-star hotel in Goa and be very sad? And you could be wherever you are, just walking around in the yard outside, feeling very happy. It is very important to know you can be vacationing in a hotel in Venice or Paris and you can be miserable, and you can be joyous wherever you are, just sitting, looking out the window. Being happy is not dependent on what you do and what you have. How many of you have seen sometimes poor children? They're playing with a little box or a bottle or something, and they are so happy. And how many of you have seen people, children from rich families with hundreds of thousands of rupees worth of toys, and they're not happy? If you travel around the world, how many of you have seen that sometimes poor people are so happy? Sometimes when you come to the industrially developed parts of the world, you will see the most unhappy people. America is one of the most miserable countries in the world. It's one of the loneliest and one of the most miserable countries in the world, in my opinion. People are always stressed. Life has become mechanical. The whole society is modeled after a machine. And we have built our organizations like machines. We have built our institutions like machines. Yes, it's very orderly, very predictable, very productive in that way. But you have lost something very beautiful and human, the authenticity. You have lost the importance of emotional connections between people, in my opinion. So that's the path of awakening to your own being, the path of ego transcendence. Osho reminds us that each one of us is trying to be a wave. I'm trying to impress you now, with my speech. But the irony is this: the wave might get a lot of attention. The wave is coming at you. Look at me, look at me. But how many of you can see, says Osho, it's only when the wave dies, when the wave is no more, that the whole power of the ocean is behind it. So it's each one of us. It's only when our ego dies that we are in touch with our deeper power. Okay. The other one, past, there are several of them, and I don't want to get into that. I've already gone well beyond my time. I'm sorry.
So we will have 5 more minutes, and then maybe if you can say the other points also, if possible.
If possible, yeah. Another one is the path of seeing with new eyes. What do I mean by the path of seeing with new eyes? Osho reminds us, think about the word peak, shikhar, right? Peak, a mountain peak. Is that called shikhar in Hindi? Is that the right word? Peak, right? A mountain peak. If I give you a dictionary and say, what is the opposite of a peak? You will say it is a valley, right? Opposite of peak is valley. But Osho reminds us that in real life, peaks and valleys are not opposites, they're connected. Every peak leads to a valley, and every valley leads to a peak. Night and day are not opposite, they're connected. Hot and cold are not opposite. So if you look at nature, you will see everything is connected. How many of you would agree there's at least one human being in your life that you love very much? At least one person that you love? But let me ask you another question. How many of you know that there are times when you also hate this person a lot? Right? So love and hate are not opposites. The very people that you love your parents, but you hate them. Right? If you're married, you love your wife, you hate her. Right? Unfortunately, my wife, I think the balance became a little topsy-turvy. But what I'm describing is love and hate also are not opposites. You can love and hate the same person. So in nature, says Osho, nothing is opposite. Peaks and valleys are the same. But you know how, as human beings, we want success and no failure? How is that possible? How many of you can see that the very idea of success contains with it the idea of failure? You cannot speak of success unless you also speak of failure. When we awaken to the beautiful totality of life, you begin to understand that perfectionism is not the way forward. Accept the total. Accept the part of you that is loving. Accept the part of you that's angry. Accept the part of you that succeeds. Accept the part of you that fails. And that is also an important path. And another path is getting beyond the robotic nature of life. Think about it. If you drive a car, you'll drive to some place. And when you arrive in 30 minutes, I'll ask you, how did you get here? Most of us will have no recollection. We are going about our day like robots, from one thing to the other. And we have no recollection. Only in a few moments we are fully awake and we are present. And one of the things that the Zen masters tell us is 5-10 times in a day, ask yourself, am I really awake or am I a robot? And if you can ask yourself in that moment, you become awake, because you will agree that a robot cannot ask of itself whether it's a robot. So the moment I ask myself, Param, am I being a robot? This talk that I'm delivering, am I just delivering it like a robot, or am I putting some feeling into it? In that very moment when I ask myself, even if I know this talk and I've given it before, I will not be giving it like a robot. So becoming conscious and awake, that is another aspect of consciousness-based transformation. I want to pause and stop. I want to thank you all. I went well over my time limit. It is a reflection of your generosity that you were so kind to me to allow me to keep going on and on. You must have thought, poor chap, at 9 somebody said he's stupid, so he's now going on and on to prove to us that he's smart. Let him talk.
Not
so
at
thank
all,
you for your kindness.
Not at all. It's like when somebody is entering the heart, we let it move in slowly, and then he takes over the heart fully. So we don't stop anybody, sir, in terms of when the things are going very heartfulness, kind of a mindfulness.
I'm very grateful to you, Nitinji. Thank you.
So you have touched upon two deep dimensions of excellence, whether you said mindfulness and you said self-acceptance. These two issues you have touched in a very depth format. And the fourth, we will call you again, sir, for the next 4 points also. We don't want to miss those 4 points also. So I'm going to invite you again for the next 4 points also. Sir, since time is there, I will ask one question, and then if audience, if anybody have a question, they can put on the camera and they can ask the question directly before I ask the question. So students, if anybody have a question, Gazia, Alvina, if you have a question from the audience, you can ask also, please. Anybody from the audience want to ask a question? So they are very shy people. They are very shy people, very young people. Even in my normal classes, normally they are around 18, 19 years of age only. And so it is at that age the UG courses are going on. And so sir, just wanted to ask you till somebody ask a question. You said about mindfulness. Sir, this word is there, mindfulness, and the other word is called heartfulness. So how do you differentiate between these two concepts? Because some people say mindfulness that, and some people say heartfulness. So are they two different concepts of excellence? Because when we talk about spiritual excellence or the life excellence, so they want to say to go in a full flow, go in a full flow. So these two words are normally heard by the students and everybody. If you can just put some light on that, sir, if possible.
Sure. Personally, I would definitely prefer the word heartfulness, because ultimately the entire spiritual journey is dropping from the head to the heart to be able to feel things deeply. But as you know, in the West, the mindfulness was the word that was made popular, and therefore everybody is accustomed to mindfulness. So the challenge for me is often to use the terminology of mindfulness because that's more accepted, but actually to develop that more as a heartfulness. That's why I talk about the self-acceptance of unsolved tears, of those sad emotions that are there within you, of having compassion for yourself. Those are all really elements of heartfulness. So thank you, Nitinji, for awakening me to the importance of heartfulness with your question itself. And I want to share that Nitinji illustrates something very powerful. Sometimes we think of questions as just a way of gathering information. I want you to see the power of the question. The moment Nitinji asks me a question about heartfulness, he causes a transformation in me. I have to drop from the mind to the heart to be able to respond to him. So therefore, please remember that your questions that you ask people are a very important tool or a way of waking people up. So for example, there is something called appreciative inquiry. And I don't know if Nitinji, people here have been exposed to appreciative inquiry.
Sir, as of now, like in different terms, in different ways, yes, they
Yes.
are. But in
Yeah.
this typical word, when you say appreciative inquiry, so maybe I don't think so. But they
So
must
you know
have
how
gone different
professors
ways.
like to, professors in the US like to make a big terminology and words for simple everyday experiences. So appreciative inquiry was a name given to a simple approach. The approach says that most of us are constantly focusing on problems. So we are thinking about all the problems I have to take care of today, tomorrow, and all that. We get overly stuck in a problem solving mode. It says stop the process and ask people questions that actually connect them. For example, ask, tell me about a time when you were really happy, a peak moment of happiness. Tell me about a time when you found deep meaning in life. What do you most appreciate about yourself? When you ask people questions like this that connects them with their happiness, with what they appreciate about themselves, we call it appreciative inquiry. You're inquiring. What are you inquiring about? I'm not asking you what are all the problems in your life. I'm not asking you what's the worst day in your life. I'm saying, tell me about your happiest day in your life. Stories, asking storytelling around the peak moments of our life when we were happiest, most contented, experiencing the joy of life. When we share stories of our joyful moments, then we come out of this problem solving mentality. That's the idea of appreciative
Okay.
inquiry.
So in that sense, yes, they are going on these ways. Sir, as you're aware, center of happiness is there. So
Haji.
we always wanted to share some kind of a joy from our side to you also. So if you
Beautiful.
permit, I will play the song that we have for the center, and that
Excellent.
will, and since you know Hindi also, so it would be a joy for you to listen that song, and for the
Absolutely.
audience also.
Thank you.
Just a second.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Gazia beta, just double check when the voice is okay. Okay, just give me thumbs up. Okay.
Yes.
हाय कैसे हो खाया क्या खुशियों की कसम ओ हेलो ऑफ है मूड सैड हो तो सुनो देखो मैंने तो खा ली है हैप्पीनेस वाली कसम इसके साथ ही कह दिया टाटा बाय टू ऑल द गम कैसे हो, खुश हो क्या, सच कहो. Okay, listen. देखो ना, झूम रही हूँ. पूछो कैसे. सबको रिकमेंड करती हूँ मैं, हैप्पीनेस वाली कसम. जिंदगी में एक ही काफी है, नो टेंशन हम हैं मगन.
Sir, this is
Thank
an
you so
original
much for a
song.
beautifully celebratory song. Is that available on YouTube?
Yes, I will. So this is a musical memento that we'll be sending it to you.
Excellent.
And so there is one small memento from MIT University, sir. We would be sending you one book. I'm sending you just visible to everybody that this is a book that I will be sending you an e-book that it is on consciousness puzzles.
Very nice, and it's written by you.
Yes, sir. So,
beautiful.
So I will be sending you as a kind of a thank you memento to you, the musical song and this book also to you, sir.
I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. So appreciate it, sir.
Thank you. Alvina, Ghazi beta, over to you for the kind vote of thanks.
Yes. On behalf of Amity University, I extend a really hearty vote of thanks to Professor Param Srikantia sir, who spared time from his busy schedule to grace the occasion. Today we had an opportunity to hear your thoughts on the organizational mystic, and this will surely be going to encourage us in our future events. I'd also like to express my gratitude to our session coordinator, Professor Dr. Nitin Arora sir, for organizing this wonderful event, and student and community for joining this event. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I would like to propose a vote of thanks to Gazia, to Alvina, to Nitinji, and to all the audience. I'm extremely grateful to you for giving me this exquisite and precious opportunity to be with you. Thank you so much.
And sir, it was a pleasure listening to you and meeting you, though we were talking over different social medias and we were talking over the WhatsApp for long, and now we are seeing face to face with each other. And I'm sure with time we are going to be together for various events and various even training programs if time permits. So we can discuss over that also via emails and all. And it would be a pleasure walking along with you, sir.
It will be a great honor for me, and I look forward to walking this path together. Thank you so much, Nitinji, for including me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alvina. Thank you, Gazia. And thank you all the dear students and the community members for joining. Signing off from here, Professor Nitin Arora, along with Dr. Param Srikantia, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.